My name is Grace Holloway. I'm 34 years old, and the last thing I expected after leaving rehab was to find a parking lot where my family's diner used to be. Seriously, I stood there with my duffel bag hanging off one shoulder while a bulldozer crawled across the empty lot like a giant yellow insect. The sign that had read Holloway's Diner for 42 years was gone. The windows were gone. Even the cracked sidewalk where my dad used to smoke after closing was gone. A guy in a hard hat walked past me and said, "Ma'am, you can't stand here." I laughed because I thought he was kidding. "This is my family's property." He looked uncomfortable. "Not anymore." That was how I found out my older brother had sold the diner while I was away. I called him immediately. "Evan, where the hell is the diner?" A long silence. Then he sighed. "Grace, I was going to tell you when you got settled." "Settled?" "There's a bulldozer where our childhood used to be. You weren't in any shape to make business decisions." That sentence hit harder than the news itself. Look, I wasn't proud of the year I'd had. After our mom died, I spiraled. Too much whiskey. Too many nights pretending I was fine. Eventually, I checked myself into a treatment program in Arizona. Before I left, I signed paperwork giving Evan temporary authority to handle bills and payroll. "Temporary? You sold it?" I asked. "I saved us," he snapped. "The diner was bleeding money. I got a good offer from a developer. We paid off the debts and split the remainder." "Split it? Your portion is in an account." I stared at the empty lot. "Dad left that diner to both of us. Dad also would have wanted you sober." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. That night, I stayed at a cheap motel outside town. I lay awake listening to trucks on the highway and thinking about the smell of coffee at 5 in the morning. The diner wasn't just a business. It was where Dad taught me to count change, where Mom danced while mopping the floor after closing, where Evan and I used to argue over who got the last slice of peach pie. The next morning, somebody knocked on my motel door. I opened it and found Mrs. Ramirez standing there. She had worked at the diner since I was 12. "Honey," she said, "we need to talk." She sat at the tiny table and wrapped both hands around a paper cup of coffee. "Your brother didn't tell you everything." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" She looked me straight in the eye. "The diner wasn't failing, sweetheart. It was finally making money." And just like that, my second chance became a whole lot more complicated. Mrs. Ramirez slid a battered notebook across the table. "I almost threw this away," she said. "Then I figured your mama would have haunted me if I did." Inside were handwritten numbers, supplier receipts, payroll records, and daily sales totals. I spent the next hour flipping through page after page. "You Grace?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "Name's Leonard Pike. I bought the diner." "Well, shoot. Of all the people I expected to meet that day, the guy who bulldozed my childhood wasn't on the list." He looked around the lot and sighed. "This isn't what I intended. Could have fooled me. Your brother told me the building was condemned and the business was dead. I planned to renovate it, not flatten it. By the time my team discovered the permits had already been approved, half the structure was gone." I folded my arms. "So what now?" Leonard reached into his truck and pulled out a thick envelope. "Now I show you something your brother asked me to destroy." Inside were architectural drawings. For a new diner, with my father's name on the sign. Behind, I nearly dropped the papers. Across the top of the blueprint, in my dad's messy handwriting, were the words, "For Grace and Evan, if you two ever quit being stubborn." Leonard chuckled softly. "Your father came to me 3 years ago, wanted advice about rebuilding the place and turning it into a community cafe. Said his kids would fight him on the cost." That sounded exactly like Dad. He had planned a bigger kitchen, a bakery, and a free meal program for veterans and single parents. Leonard was supposed to help secure financing after the old man retired. Then Dad suffered a heart attack before the project began. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I whispered. "Your father wanted it to be a surprise. After he passed, your brother found the plans. We talked about moving forward, but then his financial troubles started." I sat on the tailgate of Leonard's truck and stared at the drawings. Everything suddenly made sense. Evan hadn't only sold the diner to escape debt. He'd sold the future Dad imagined for us because he couldn't bear to admit he was drowning. A week later, Leonard invited me to his office. "I have a proposal," he said. I laughed. "You already bought my building. What's left to propose?" "Partnership." Turns out Leonard felt awful about the way the deal unfolded. He offered to transfer part of the property into a new company if I agreed to run the business once it was rebuilt. He'd handle construction. I'd handle operations. I thought he was nuts. Then Mrs. Ramirez marched into the office carrying a pie and said, "Well, honey, you gonna sit there like a possum, or are we opening a diner?" So we did. Construction took nearly a year. I worked 16-hour days learning permits, payroll, vendors, and everything Dad used to do without complaining. Some mornings my knees shook from exhaustion. Some nights I sat in my truck and cried because I wanted one drink more than anything in the world. Instead, I'd call my sponsor and say, "Hey, man, I'm hanging by a thread." And he'd answer, "Cool, hang there another hour." Evan stayed away. I heard rumors that the sports bar investors sued one another. I heard he moved into an apartment across town. I heard a lot of things. None of them mattered until opening day. The line wrapped around the block. Truckers, nurses, teachers, old regulars who remembered me sneaking fries when I was 6. Somebody started clapping when we unlocked the doors. Above the entrance hung a new sign, Holloway and Sons and Daughter. Dad would have loved that. Around lunchtime, I noticed a familiar figure standing outside across the street. Evan. He looked thinner, tired, like a man carrying a backpack full of bricks. I walked out to meet him. "Hey, Gracie," he said. Nobody had called me that since Dad died. "Hey." He shoved his hands into his pockets. "Place looks good. Thanks." A long silence. Then he swallowed hard. "I messed up." Those 3 words sounded like they cost him everything. Evan and I sat in the last booth by the window after closing. The same booth where our parents used to drink coffee and argue about crossword puzzles. "I kept thinking I could fix it before anyone found out," he admitted. "Every bad decision turned into another bad decision." "Why didn't you call me?" He laughed bitterly. "Because you were finally getting your life together, and I was busy wrecking mine." Funny thing about families. Sometimes the responsible kid falls apart, and the screw-up is the one who comes back holding the flashlight. We talked for hours. About Mom. About Dad. About the months we'd spent blaming each other because grief was easier to carry when it had a target. Near midnight, Evan slid a folder across the table. Inside were legal documents transferring a large portion of his remaining ownership rights to me. "I can't pay back what I cost," he said, "but I can stop pretending I didn't cost it." I pushed the folder back. "Keep your share." He blinked. "What? You're gonna earn it." The next morning, Evan showed up at 5 wearing an apron 2 sizes too big. Mrs. Ramirez handed him a mop and said, "About time, kid." He groaned. I knew this was a trap. Darn right it is. People ask me if we became the perfect family after that. Nope. Evan still forgets orders. I still get impatient. We still argue about whether chili belongs on hot dogs. For the record, he's wrong. But every Sunday night, after the customers leave, we lock the doors and sit in that last booth by the window. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. A few months ago, Leonard stopped by for coffee. He looked around the crowded diner and smiled. "Your father had good instincts," he said. I glanced at the kitchen where Evan was burning toast for the 3rd time that morning. "Yeah," I said. "He also had terrible timing." Leonard laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. As for me, I'm 3 years sober now. The diner pays its bills. The bakery sells out before noon. We hang a board near the register where anyone can buy a meal for a stranger who needs one. Dad's idea finally happened, just later than he planned. And when rain rolls across town and my old injuries ache, I unlock the front door before sunrise and breathe in the smell of coffee, cinnamon, and fresh bread. That's when I understand something I couldn't see standing in that empty parking lot years ago. Losing a place isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes it's the thing that forces everyone to stop lying. Sometimes it's the thing that brings people home. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the family business gets a second chance right alongside the family itself.